Hytale came out in early access, and while I know everything will be in flux, and they have already stated that the world gen system will be entirely changed, but I wanted to give it a look at this state and do a bit more of a casual, non-exhaustive look at its geology. This will have a lot of spoilers for exploring the world, and that's the part that I enjoy the most. So I've already played a bit of survival, and now I want to see what it has to offer in creative. Let's take a look at the geology of Hytale. I usually don't play games in early access, but Hytale is a bit different with its troubled past, and I'm really glad the developers were able to get something out to the public. That said, I haven't really kept up with its development much, and I know nothing of the lore. I'm just taking everything as it is presented now, and as I'm recording this, Update 2 was just released. Hypixel Studio has pages talking about World Gen and the future of World Gen, and that's where I'm getting most of my external information from. Presently, Orbis is the only world, but others plan to get added into the future. When you create a world now, you can pick Exploration or Creative. The Exploration world uses World Gen version 1, but if you pick Creative, you can select one of 3 world types. One is a flat world, one is World Gen version 2, but it only has one biome, and then a Gen 1 world, which is the same as the current Exploration world. We'll explore version 2 a bit at the end, but for now, let's look at what the current World Gen has to offer. The world is broken down into 4 zones, and each zone has multiple biomes inside it. Zones are roughly aligned with an element. Emerald Wilds is earth, Howling Sands is wind, Winterfrost Frontiers is water, and the Devastated Lands is fire. There are 2 more planned zones, and the Hytale elemental chart has lightning and void in it, so I'm guessing that's what they'll be, and not heart and monkey. There is a general progression of difficulty from one zone to the next. Not that the player will necessarily encounter them in that order, but to progress through the tiers of upgrades, you will basically need to go through these zones in this order because each zone has certain resources that are more abundant or only found in each of them. The player does always start in the Emerald Wilds though. And the first thing you do in any voxel game is dig straight down. I am going to enable a developer tool so we can see the block we're actually looking at too. After the first few layers of dirt, we get to some solid rock, just called stone. Same as Minecraft, stone is just a very nondescript name, and it could be one of many rocks. My bet is on dolomite for a reason that we'll get to in a bit. If you don't hit a cave, the next thing you'll hit about Y80 is basalt, but it's only a few blocks thick. And then you go back to stone. Then around Y50, you'll get back to basalt, and then this is like a thick layer of basalt. And we fell into a cave. And at around Y40, you get to what they just call volcanic rock, which is pretty funny. It is a darker black. We'll talk more about that in a second. Let's go down to the bottom of the world. Because you have this volcanic rock basically all the way until you get to bedrock. And then there's only a few more layers before you fall out of the bottom of the world. So to talk about this more, we're going to use some of the creative tools, and we're going to cut like a bigger hole into the world. You can see the basalt layer isn't the same elevation practically everywhere. It does have a little bit of variation up and down, even a section where it's not necessarily complete there. So I've dug down in a few locations in a couple different worlds, and it seems to be consistent everywhere in this zone. And that is consistent with all of the other zones as well. They tend to have the same geology after you get a little bit below the surface. The basalt is a cool layer that adds a little bit of variety, and I can interpret this as a sill of basalt. Sometimes as magma is coming up, it will find a weakness in a layer of rock and literally inflate that area. So maybe this connects up with the volcanic devastated lands, and that's the source of this basalt. We'll have to see how it behaves when you go from one zone to another. Below this thicker layer of basalt, then you just get this volcanic rock, which continues until you get to the bottom of the world. And then it's just a few layers of bedrock. Since this volcanic rock is dark and deeper, it could maybe represent the intrusive version of basalt, which is gabbro. There are also these stalagmite and stalactite looking formations made of volcanic rocks, which you could have some dripping lava form something like this, but in game they're just called stalagmites and stalactites, which is incorrect. I've made this little area here where we can do like a little compressed stratigraphic column for each of the rock layers that we go through in each area. We'll come back to here after we do each one and then kind of do this for all of them. The specific biomes in Zone 1 are varieties of plains, forest, and wetlands. Interestingly though, the wetlands are specifically called fens. Probably just the developers trying to use a more interesting name than swamp. But fens in real life have a basic pH and higher mineral content water than other wetlands like swamps, bogs, or marshes. This is commonly because the bedrock under them is a carbonate rock like limestone or dolostone, which is neutralizing any acidic water. So that's why I think stone is a carbonate. You also find some spires of slate in the fens too. It's a low-grade metamorphic rock, so it's pretty unrealistic showing up like this, especially as these spires. There might be a justification that comes up later, but it's also a fantasy game. The devs probably just wanted a dark, cool-looking structure, and it also gives the player a source for these blocks. The biomes also have surface features that just seem to be sitting on or into the topography, and they don't really connect into the underlying geology. These chalk cliffs are pretty cool, and they even have these boulders laying around that gives the feeling that they broke off and fell down. If we dig into them, you can see that they just sit on the topography. There's even grass blocks sitting under them, and it seems like the chalk is just on the surface. If you dig through them, you will just hit a layer of rock right below them. This isn't a complaint, I'm just dissecting how the world gen is working. You can also find marble, which in real life does come from carbonates, so you could have chalk that gets metamorphosed into marble. The mountains can also have marble in them, which is cool. You often form metamorphic rocks during mountain building. Each zone also has unique caves as well, and this is where you'll find most of the ores that are needed for progression. Zone 1 has an abundance of copper and iron, and some gold and silver. Normal progression of gear starts with wood or stone, and then copper, iron, thorium, cobalt, adamantite, mithril, and then onyxium. I think the base part is onyx, but whatever it is, it's a made-up mineral. Right now, the last two aren't generated in the game, and I'm not sure what gold and silver is used to make either. We'll talk more about the ores later. Zone 2 has dry environments like badlands, steppes, and desolate basins, which can have these large hives and lots of large skeletons lying around. Something interesting that Hytale does is it tries to mark areas of interest visually. So in the desert, caves are marked with outcrops of stone. Speaking of which, the surface of Zone 2 tends to be a lot of sand and red and brown clays. So let's see what we get when we dig down. Below the sand, we get sandstone, and then a couple smaller layers of red sandstone, dry dirt, white sandstone, and then back to sandstone again. Back to red, and then eventually we get to the volcanic rock again. Below that is largely the same until you get to bedrock. We can also take a look at what happens when two zones meet. Just a sharp line. Even the lower volcanic rock section doesn't match up with the neighboring ones. And it looks like even cave systems just dead end into the other rock formations. Maybe this will be something that gets addressed in World Gen version 2. There's our stratigraphic stack from Zone 2, and Zone 2 is where you can find abundant amounts of thorium. Zone 3 is the cold zone, specifically called Whisper Frost Frontiers. The vegetation is more blue tinted, and we get a few more types of rocks. The mountain biome is mostly basalt and stone, with a little bit of shale on top. Shale is a fine-grained sedimentary rock defined by its thin foliated layers, so I don't know what's going on with the texture. I can only think that maybe it would be hard to tell the difference between shale and slate, but the shale texture is so much more blue than the slate, so I don't know. We also get these continental glaciers, which are incredibly cool, and there are still rivers here. They just run underneath all of the glaciers, so you have like this little ice cave going underneath there, but it's still technically like on the surface. Really, really cool. Where the glaciers meet the ocean, they break up and form icebergs, which everyone knows 90% of them are above the water. Digging down below them, you get some shale, some slate, and then basalt, and then a very thick layer of shale, then all the way down to volcanic rock on top of the bedrock. Many of the caves in this area are flooded, but you can still find a lot of life down here. It's cool to have some coral near the warmer volcanic rocks. It creates kind of a similar vibe to volcanic vents in real life. A lot of the rocks in Zone 3 also have like a bluish, cooler tone to them, which is really nice. And I think a lot of the rocks are very fitting for like the more mountainous area. Like I said earlier, many times mountains contain a lot of metamorphic rocks because they involve a lot of pressure and temperature like during their formation. Zone 3 is also where you can find more abundant cobalt. Before we get to the last zone, let's talk about oceans. They're technically not part of any of the 4 zones, but they are pretty fleshed out. You have coral reefs, a good variety of fish and things to explore, and this update just added scuba gear. The 4th zone is volcanic and has the biggest spoilers for exploration. Last warning. This zone seems to always be surrounded by ocean, so the idea of the basalt layers coming directly from this doesn't really work out. But maybe it's the same source deeper down. Geologically, these zones are still pretty small if you compare them to real life. Nothing wrong with that. I think they're a very good size for fun exploration. Much of the landscape is fractured, and we get some new materials near the surface in the form of some ash called ashen sand and soil, which could be tough. I actually haven't checked to see if any of the blocks are affected by gravity. Oh, you can't even place it right here. Is that? Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so if I break this, it just pops off. And you can't even place it yet. So you have to have a supporting block to place blocks that are affected by gravity, but they just pop off as an item. I wonder if that works for, like, if you dig underneath here. Yeah. Well, that's kind of interesting for, like, actual harvesting if you need a lot of sand or something. You can find a lot of slate near the surface, which is probably because they needed another dark rock for the area, but it could be a big chunk that got brought up with the magma when the area was being inflated by the magma chamber down below. And if there is slate down below, then maybe those pieces of slate over in the fen area were ejected out of the volcano, and those were shards that like rained down around that area. There was also cooled magma, which would just be a rock. Technically, it's on the surface, so it's cold lava, not magma. Unless they're saying it cooled down below the surface and then it got brought up and exposed somehow. We can also look at the lava-water interaction while we're here. As far as I can tell, it works the same as Minecraft lava and water. Okay, so we have our water source block and then some flowing water. And then we'll put lava on top. I don't know if that worked. What happened? Yeah, okay. Let's get rid of the lava. Yeah, okay. So the water source turns into stone and flowing water turns into cobblestone. Same as Minecraft. So that means if we do this, what do we get? Oh, we get cooled magma. All right, so wait, is obsidian not a thing in the game? No. So cooled magma is kind of replacing obsidian. That's cool. I actually like that. That's fine. I like the texture of the block. It does look like cooled down lava. All right, I concede. I think cooled lava would be a better name than cooled magma, but that's okay. I've made my peace. Okay, before we look at the actual volcanoes, let's dig down to bedrock and see what this area looks like that way. Starting at the surface here, we have volcanic rock. And then I'm assuming just stone. Oh, basalt. Awesome. And then stone. And then basalt, stone, basalt, gravel. Oh, a little tiny layer of gravel. Okay. Stone. Ooh, quartzite. That's a new one. What's this? Basalt. Okay. Quartzite, gravel, stone, basalt, volcanic rock, and then finally bedrock. So that's pretty interesting. The quartzite is pretty strange here. Let me try and see if I can change the time of day. Quartz is metamorphosed sandstone, and it's in the stone here. So maybe these are the original rock layers, like right here. And then, you know, we started to get volcanic action. You started to get some sills coming in and breaking. And then on the surface, you started to have flood basalts coming out. And then I missed the shale layer here. Yeah, okay. So there is a large shale layer that is down below. So maybe this is the shale for a lot of the places that, you know, it is kind of out of place. Maybe it was actually erupted like out of the volcanic area or something like that. But lastly, let's look at the volcanoes, because the volcanoes are a little bit special in this area. Besides having like all these cool like lava flows coming down them, some of them actually are opened into the magma chamber down below. And so you can travel down these and get into a large open chamber. And we see our same layering that we saw when we dug down. But more importantly, it also opens up into like a literal land of the lost, like with actual dinosaurs and prehistoric trees and all sorts of stuff down here. They actually name things like Archaeopteryx, pterodactyl. There's a little kind of Triceratop-esque thing. There's like a raptor like dinosaur here. I think there's a T-Rex. It's not called a T-Rex. It's called like a cave rex or something like that down here. But really cool. And these areas are almost under the entire zone 4. So like almost anywhere in zone 4, if you dig down, you will like find this area. Totally unrealistic, but very cool. I like the canopy effect on the trees here too. So this animantite ore is only found in this cooled magma as well. That's the only place you can find it, and to my knowledge, I think you can only find it in zone 4 now. If you're wondering how plants grow in here, the roof is actually covered in like crystals too that are all like lit up in these fractures. So before we move on to some other things, I just want to say that I think this is like a really good start. I am very pleased that it's not just like a surface coating of rocks like in each zone, and then the zone underneath is like the same in every, single area. It's really nice to have some variety of rocks and themes, and it helps make like each zone feel like different, even underground and everything. If I had to like give a little interpretation of like the area, zone 1 could be like a platform geologic province where you had a lot of sedimentary rocks, like shallow ocean forming limestones and things, and then you had an intrusive event where you have this basalt like coming in, and maybe that is what elevated the area, so pulled it up above the water level. Zone 2 would be a terrestrial deposition area, similar to the American Midwest, like Montana Badlands area, where you have a lot of sediment and low areas that are being deposited down. And also now that's possibly lifted up by some geologic event. You have a mountainous area here, which has a lot of metamorphic rocks, or some metamorphic rocks. It definitely could have some more metamorphic rocks to be a little bit more complete, but it's interesting, and I think the color works really well for like the area. And then the last area, the volcanic area, really cool. You definitely could have like some other, I would just change like the ash and some of the layers into actual like tuff or things like that, and use some more like volcanic rocks and everything. But I'm sure things will change in the future with coming updates with things like that and everything. Okay, before moving on to ores, there are a couple more just general world gen things that I wanted to comment on. Like many procedural games, rivers don't really exist in Hytale. Rivers carry water from areas of high elevation to low elevation, and all the rivers are the same elevation as oceans. However, they do a very good job of having like these little turns and these little sandbars and stuff that really gives a very good impression like of the rivers. And like I commented earlier, I really like how like some of the rivers cut into the glaciers, and I didn't comment in the dry areas, which I can't see here. In the dry areas, there really aren't like rivers, but you can see like dried like riverbeds in some areas, which is very cool. I went and found one. Here you can see that this is a dry riverbed. I have seen some that are just have no vegetation whatsoever. But the interesting thing to me is that they do actually connect up to rivers going across like zones. There's one over here too, and I think there's another one. This one less so, but it does look like there is some, communication between like the zones for like the whatever they're doing to actually do the world gen. So it looks like there could be like a way to do like caves like seamlessly, possibly from one side to the other too, which would be a big improvement over what they have now. There was also a very nice variety of cliffs in the landscape. This is something that really doesn't exist in Minecraft. You can get cliffs at like an ocean edge in Minecraft, but once on land, it's almost very like gradual transitions between elevations. Even if they are steep, there's really nothing like vertical. Maybe that's to help with traversal in Minecraft, but one of the features that I really like in Hytale that's not really geologic related is climbing. You can jump up 5 blocks and like mantle up. A really cool feature. And cave-wise, the same issue that exists in most games exists here. Really, you only find caves in carbonate rocks like limestone and dolomite, and occasionally you'll have lava tubes. The caves in Hytale cut through any rock, but caves are fun. I think it bothers me more that you can find like cave formations of any rock. Like you shouldn't have sandstone or slate speleothems. What? Dude. Right here? I'm building. Oh, sorry for waking you. I've gone through the creative inventory and pulled out all of the natural stones and everything. Weirdly enough, basalt is the only named actual igneous rock. There is not like granite, rhyolite, diorite, andesite, gabbro, obsidian, phonolite, trachyte, many other igneous rocks that they could use. Basalt is the only one. Besides that, you have cool magma, volcanic rock, and bedrock, if you classify that. And I'm not talking about ice and snow and water, technically also magma and igneous rocks, but I mean the normal igneous rocks. Wait, do they actually have, is hot magma a thing? No, they don't have hot magma. They have the ore and then this incorrect item, this is going to be fixed, and then cooled magma. So they don't actually even have hot magma. Cracked, they have cracked basalt and cracked volcanic rock. Wait, are those the same thing? Wait, okay, so the item looks the same. That one looks different. Okay, yeah, so they have cracked volcanic. Yeah, that's like super limiting. I would definitely add like more rocks on the igneous side of things. You could do some like really pretty stuff with some of those rocks. On the sediment side of things, doing pretty good. You have like clay in a bunch of different colors. I only have one here. You have a couple different varieties of sand. You have cobblestone, and then you have gravel. You have sandy gravel and just regular gravel. So you even have a gradation between like stuff. And, that's right. You have a cobble for most of the other rock types as well. I only picked the one for basalt here, but pretty good job. Sedimentary rocks doing okay. We have some varieties of sandstone. We have chalk, just nondescript stone, which I would love for them just to change the dolostone. It's a cool sounding name. Nobody uses it, and it's a very common sedimentary rock. You have just calcite rock, which would technically be limestone. Limestone is dominantly calcite. Calcite is the mineral that makes it up. But weirdly enough, we'll get to it in a second. There's like an oddball section down here. They have limestone bricks. In fact, they have bricks for a couple different things. Ledgestone and peachstone are not real rocks, but limestone is. And there's a few limestone like made products, but there's no just limestone rock like in the game. So that really could be calcite. Like, they're colored different, but like the dominant mineral in limestone is calcite. And then you have shale, fine-grained mud, and then salt, which I don't think is actually in the game yet, but I found it in the creative inventory. I'm not sure if that's going to be used for something or like how you'll actually get that. Metamorphic is pretty limited. You have marble, quartzite, and slate. Above, this is like very low-grade metamorphic rock. Above this is schist, phyllite, and then gneiss, and then migmatite, and then everything melts again. Any rock can be metamorphosed into some different rock, and so there's a lot of like really cool rocks that could be used for that, but kind of limiting here. And then the oddballs, we talked about these, but then there's also aquastone, which I'm assuming, I don't know, it reminds me of prismarine, which is also a fake rock from Minecraft, but not sure. I haven't seen that generate in the world or any structures or anything like that. But anyway, that kind of does it for the rocks. Now let's look at the ores. First off, every ore essentially shares the same model, just the texture changes. They're all cubic, sort of like everything in the game. There are many minerals that grow in cubic shapes, but not quite like this. Isometric minerals like galena, halite, pyrite, and bismuth, and you can get a lot of different shapes building with squares. The crystals in Hytale are longer in one dimension than the other, so they kind of resemble bladed clusters, which are usually not in isometric minerals though. I'm not going to go into detail on these, but in short, none of these crystals resemble their real-life minerals in shape, and most don't resemble the color, or even exist. The rocks the real ores are found in is possible, but generally not where you would find them. It's fantasy, and they are mostly just placed for game progression, and that's fine. I've laid them out here in the rocks that they can be found in, at least as of update number 2. That's to say, these are the rocks the ore will be in, but not the layer of rock they are found in. I think this might change because currently it's very strange to just have these pockets of out-of-place rock. But if you see something out of place, there might be ore in them. Copper is probably the closest to real life. Its color is correct, and you can find native copper like this in the ground. Same thing for gold and silver, actually. Iron is basically never found as metallic iron. I know people are going to comment meteors are iron, but those are iron-nickel alloys, not pure iron. Thorium is a wild metal to use. It's radioactive, which I guess is why it's green, even if that's wrong. As a metal, it's quite soft, so maybe they just picked it because it sounds cool. Cobalt is another metal. It's very hard, but brittle. Cobalt blue is a thing, and its pigment is made of cobalt. And adamantite has a long history in games as a mythical metal or material. Adaman is actually an old term for diamonds, which are in the game. So technically, the highest achievable tier of gear in the game is diamond, even though it's not made with diamonds. They do have mithril ore in the creative menu, just in regular stone, but I don't think it actually spawns anywhere. And they do have the models for the onyxium, and there is also a prisma ore, but they don't have any models of it actually in any rocks. So I'm sure those are coming in the future. And like the diamonds I mentioned earlier, there are also just a series of gems. There's diamond, emerald, ruby, sapphire, topaz, voidstone, and zephyr. So I actually don't know what the use is for these. I didn't actually look into it, but you can find them in geodes. I've found a couple underground. And then there are also just these crystals that are just literally just called like green crystal or other colored crystals, but I have no idea what they're for or what they're supposed to represent. Maybe the crystals have to do with the magic system or something like that. Okay, lastly, let's go back to the Creative Hub, and then we can look at World Gen version 2. So I've looked in here previously a little bit, and it seems like it's all like one biome, and there really isn't any structures or anything like that like in here either. We do have these really impressive looking cliffs, like incredibly tall. I actually don't know what the build height is here, but if we look at the rocks, we have quartzite, clay, dirt. I'm trying to see if there's any other rocks in here. But to me, this looks like a painting and not like an actual rock formation. Like, you know, they're just using the colors to try to do some cool stuff. And it is very neat that you have like these like boulder fields like at the base of these cliffs. That's really cool. Are they both materials? It's quartzite and like the stone. Oh, stone is here also. Where's stone at? Well, okay, there is some stone there. Okay. If we cut into these cliff faces, you can actually see that some of the surface fractures actually carry in through the rock, which is pretty neat. It's almost like little micro, you know, I guess not caves, but like, you know, they're little tiny noise features. They almost remind me of like Voronoi edges or something like that, like how they are like sharp and fractured like that. But if we dig down here, it's just the same rock. From what I've looked at with like what they've revealed of World Gen version 2, it's mostly them talking about like these new tools that are available for like how to actually construct and set rules for things like in the world. This obviously looks like it's not complete, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time like talking about it. So I think that's all we're going to do for like looking at it here. Let's go back. And that's everything that I wanted to talk about. There are obviously a lot of things that are going to be changing in the game, and I think they're off to a very good start. I will probably be checking in every once in a while, kind of see like what's being added. I will definitely be reading, you know, the patch notes and everything. And it'll be really cool to see what they do with like the different worlds, like how much thought they actually put into the geology of those places. I want to thank Spoon from my Discord for helping out with the machinima controls. I didn't talk about that side of the game, but it's in an early state and pretty clunky. It will definitely get better. I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I can't figure out the emote system, so I just have to wave my staff menacingly. Well, that's normal.